As North Carolina wrestles with the best way to reopen the state for business amid the COVID-19 pandemic, tens of thousands of people have signed up with a social media group dubbed Reopen NC. Many of them converged in Raleigh on April 14th. They protested government orders that keep them from working and operating small businesses. Police broke up that protest and arrested one woman. A week later, our next guest decided to join a follow-up protest. U.S. Representative Dan Bishop is North Carolina's congressman representing the 9th District. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mitch. Good to see you. Good to be with you.
You too as well. And there are plenty of things you could be doing as a member of Congress, lots of weighty things that our nation's legislative branch is dealing with. Why come to Raleigh to participate in this protest?
I can't think of anything more weighty than carrying out the duty that I was sworn to, and that's to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. When last week, as you mentioned in the lead, folks, the Raleigh Police, after in the course of that protest, issued that unfortunate tweet that went viral that said, "Protest is not an essential activity." I knew from that moment that I was going to be at the next Reopen NC event because the right to protest, the right to peaceably assemble and to petition the government is secured to people by the First Amendment of the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't get suspended under a stay-at-home order. It still exists, and it still secures important rights, and they have to be kept in balance. And there's some other rights that it guarantees as well. But I knew that I was going to be here to honor and support the great work being done by the people who formed that organization or that group, social media group, and those like it across the country.
What did you think when you first saw that tweet from the Raleigh Police that got so much attention?
I had some sympathy, frankly, for whatever poor tweeter on behalf of the department put that up. But there is a lesson in that, which is we tend to forget about fundamental things sometimes when we get bogged down in the details of everyday governance. And I think that Roy Cooper has made the same error that police, whoever was at the police department, put that dumb tweet out. And what I mean by that is the governor, even as a fair amount of time has gone by under his stay-home order, he's allowed that to remain now pending indefinitely. He's not articulated when it will end. Moreover, he has not set forth any plan with definitive criteria for when it would cease to exist. He's talked about this little alliterative gimmick slogan, testing, tracing, and trends, but not really clear what he means. And more to the point, one of the other rights secured by that First Amendment is the right of a free media, the right of the press, free press. And that implies that government will be transparent and will disclose, especially when in the middle of an emergency in which confidence would be promoted by disclosing information. And the disclosure by the governor and his administration has been sorely lacking. Same for county officials. We don't know what models the governor's depending on, and to the extent he's depending on a volunteer group of epidemiologists, he has not had them put all of their information out in public so that it can be vetted. That's exactly what they should be doing.
We are chatting with U.S. Representative Dan Bishop, who represents North Carolina's 9th District. Also remembers Roy Cooper from your days working in the state Senate. And one of the things that has cropped up here is that when people have talked about reopening North Carolina, one of the responses from the other side is, but hey, this is a health emergency. I mean, if people are going back to work, we're going to see this pandemic wreak all kinds of havoc and potentially major loss of life. Why do we not have to just defer to the health experts on this?
It's fundamentally contrary to our system of governance and our view of the dignity of each individual to expect anyone to stand and have their privileges and rights suspended without explanation. We just don't do it that way. And now let me say something that I want to be very clear about. The COVID-19 pandemic is a very serious threat, and we need to maintain social distancing behaviors, and they need to go on even though the lockdown needs to end. What we see in all of the data that is available, if you examine it carefully, is that the numbers, the anticipated, the projected volumes of bed needs and ICU needs and so forth, they all fallen below expectations repeatedly. The models have had to be revised downward. There's an indication there that the lockdowns have overshot their mark. And perhaps one reason that those things have not even been predicted, even though the models incorporate distancing, is because it may well be because that they didn't take into account the effects of voluntary distancing before the lockdown orders took effect. But in any event, we seem to have exceeded the mark that we need to. And so now these vague justifications, shifting rationales the governor's offering to just say he's going to lift this sometime in the future, but he doesn't know when, they won't do. That's all there is to it.
We mentioned that the April 14th event is what prompted you to come to Raleigh, so you participated in the April 21st event. What'd you think going down there and hanging out with those folks?
It renewed my pride as an American. That really is. I was talking with folks I was with as we were departing. There's an exhilaration that comes from seeing people stand up for liberty. Liberty, Ronald Reagan said it doesn't get passed on in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for and protected. And every generation and every few years, there's always a threat to freedom. I saw a tweet, somebody responding or criticizing me as I drove over here, that people forget about how important this is, and that it never goes away, even in an emergency. Your rights aren't subsumed by the state in this country. That's what this country's very essence is.
As a member of Congress or as a North Carolinian in general, what do you hope happens next in this state?
I think we need transparency and we need a plan. So transparent, both of those are very fulsome words, and they each mean a lot. The governor needs to turn a new page with respect to the way his Department of Health and Human Services is operating. It's not sufficient to say, well, trust us, we have experts, they'll make your decisions for you. They've got to put out data. They've got to put out models. Their models have to make sense. They have to track actual outcomes, or they have to admit that they're wrong. We need a plan under which we continue to maintain very rigorous social distancing activities, under which the governor sets goals and moves in the direction of reopening the state. And he really ought to retract something that I think has been followed in state after state and is fundamentally ill-conceived. This notion of categorizing people and businesses as essential and non-essential. Nobody in our society is non-essential. That's just and it comes out when you're empty, when it's essential to have ABC stores selling liquor, but religious services are non-essential. Someone's attempting to say something, but they're not saying it well, and that's fundamentally the wrong way to go. I think we need to go back to the drawing board on that. But basically the issue is we've got to reopen North Carolina, let people get back to their lives, including their work lives, under practices that people will pursue with great goodwill and cooperation to maintain social distancing so that we don't lose the benefit of that as we continue to control the pandemic.
And as a person with a vote in D.C. on Capitol Hill, what do you hope happens from a national perspective?
The United States government has been and is going to continue to need to extend a lot of support in this economy as the government has effectively shut the economy down. But there's something else that is clear, and another reason that I think it's compelling to get the economy back open is it is beyond the capacity of the federal government to carry this burden for long. It just cannot displace the economy. And so We have the obligation to move quickly, to move and we've got a matter the supplemental funding to the Paycheck Protection Program. I've supported that. There's some reasons to have some misgivings about it, but the support for small businesses under the circumstances where their opportunities have been deprived and taken from them by government saying you need to shut down for the sake of this pandemic, they're going to have to be supported. The government's going to have to support enterprise until it can get rolling again.